Welcome back to Short Stories with Droid. This is going to be the start of a series of short stories to build up a particular kind of world and existence. So, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Let's begin. They were called the Warriors. The Knights, she said. Her companion rested his back against one of the upright columns on the edge of the roof. The first time I met them, I was a kid. And it's a long story, but I was about to be killed. I suppose I should tell this properly. I was a young girl in a village, not exposed to the outside world very much. And as happens, like isolated places, they become superstitious. They suspect people and they start to turn inwards. They can work well, but little things grow and become a problem. When I was a kid, strange things used to happen around me all the time. And that's where the problem came from. My mother was blamed for the strange things that were happening, and it escalated and grew. When I was 7, it boiled over, and my family were killed, and I ran. I didn't really understand what was going on, but my mother told me to run, and there was screaming, and so I ran. But the other people, they came after me, and, well, they started throwing stones. The first one hit my shoulder and I fell, and then the next few stones, they felt like they were hitting me in the head, but they weren't. And when I opened my eyes, I had a shield around me, a bubble of purple light. And every time a stone hit it, it felt like something was hitting me on the head. It felt like pain inside my head. And I would have died there, but that's when I met the Knights. Camouflage, body armor, rifles across their shoulders. They would have walked past, except one of them always used to be called White. Because he was the White Knight, he had the savior streak. He liked to save everybody and everything. He tried to do the right thing. I don't really remember when it happened, but one of the men from the village had tried to grab me through the shield, tried to push his hands through the shield, and he was lying on the ground away from me, arms ripped to pieces. Whatever was protecting me was enough to damage people. But when the people from my village had been chased off, White Knight just reached through the shield. I watched his skin blister and split open and blood trickled down his hands, but he just ignored it and just kept talking to me. I mean, I didn't understand the words he was saying back then. We didn't speak the same language, and eventually, like, the pain of the shield and the pressure on my head, and I passed out. But the middle-aged woman standing on the roof shook her head and sat down beside her companion, who was slowly bolting together a sniper rifle laid across his lap. He raised an eyebrow and said, "So, 3 months of nothing, and now you decide to tell me your life story?" She laughed a little bit, sort of sheepishly, and shrugged her shoulders. "What can I say? I take a while to warm up to people." He rolled his eyes and pulled 2 cartridges, 2 magazines, from his bag and started checking them. He raised an eyebrow and said, "You speak about them as if they're heroes, but everyone now knows of them as the horsemen, the bringers of the disasters that have come since." She shrugged and rolled her eyes. They were heroes. At least they tried to be, but the world's not black and white. One man's hero is another man's villain, and that's the way it goes. to me, White Knight would always be a hero. He saved my life, and even though he didn't want to and didn't know how, he did his best to try and raise me. He taught me how to control myself, control the powers that I'd been cursed with or blessed with, whatever you want to call them, but it was a hard thing to learn. I was a young girl without a family. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know anything. He'd never had a family. He didn't know anything about kids. But he tried. Fine, it was... Nowadays, like, if you could have seen the relationship, people would have called it abusive, manipulative, whatever. But I would have died without the control that I've learned. And now I can do some good with it. I mean, he even taught me to do good with it. I was 14 years old, and I'd been going to school now for several years, and Witch, one of the other knights, she'd convinced him to send me to school, and I was behind in classes because I hadn't been to school since I was 7 years old, and she'd helped me. She encouraging me to catch up. He didn't care about school. He wanted me to learn to control my powers and to use my powers right. He said it wasn't important that I go to school, but Witch saw different. And then one night when I was 14, one day at school, I was invited to a party by the popular girls and the popular boys, and he told me I wasn't allowed to go, and I hated him for it. But that same night, at 2 o'clock in the morning, he woke me up and he told me to put on my stalking equipment. He'd been teaching me to go through the night unseen, and I cursed him out and tried to tell him to go away, but he wouldn't take no for an answer, so we went. I wore my black armor, and so did he, and we wore camouflage face paint, and it was probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes before I realized where we were going. We were going to the place where the party was. It was supposed to be an all-night party at one of the warehouses down in the industrial district. He took me down there, and we sat on the roof and we watched. And it was probably 4 o'clock in the morning when things started going bad. I mean, it wasn't anything big. There were a couple of fights here and there, but then there was stuff that was going on there that was too much for a young girl. Some of my friends from school, if I could be said to have any friends, some of the girls I knew, they were getting in far over their heads, and I told him to stop it. And he looked at me and he said, "Why?" He asked me, why should he stop it? This isn't his party, this isn't his duty. He wouldn't have been here if he didn't want to show me what things like this happened. And then he looked at me and he said, "You've got the ability to. If you want to stop it, you stop it." He was teaching me that sometimes you act, sometimes you don't, and it's a choice. You choose when to act, you choose how to act, and you choose why you act. And if you don't choose to act the right way, and if you don't choose when to act the right time, things can go wrong and people can get hurt, and that's on your head. Back on the rooftop, her companion was leveling his rifle and setting up the bipod. The story had paused and she was looking out over the city. He could tell that her face had fallen to a dark, unhappy place. And he didn't really want to push, but he had to push. He needed to know what happened. So as quietly and as gently as he could, he asked, "Well, so what did you do?" She sighed and ran her head up. She sighed and ran a hand up across her face and through her hair, pulling the ponytail tied at the back of her head, both hands moving to adjust the bulletproof jacket she wore. I panicked and shouted and made a scene, and I'd never really used my powers outside of our home. the place where we lived. I'd never really done anything other than training, but I intervened. I wasn't as controlled as I should have been. I wasn't as focused as I should have been. We had to move house and change town, and I never saw any of them again, but White always told me that I never actually killed anyone that night. I can't remember if I did. I don't know if I killed anyone. At least not then. She gave a wry and slightly self-depreciating snicker. Since then, I've killed plenty. Her companion put down the rifle and said, just to change subject, you've told me and you've shown me you can make these force fields that stop bullets and cars and God knows what else. You can make these balls of power and energy. Why do you wear a bulletproof jacket? She laughed. That was one of White's things. To use one of my shields, I need to see the danger coming, so he always insisted, wear body armor. It's no extra hassle to actually wear something that can save your life, and doesn't matter how powerful you are, sometimes you get unlucky. Best to insulate yourself. But slowly her face had been turning darker and darker, moving from a dark night to a cloudy night to a thunderstorm waiting to happen. Her companion was getting a little concerned, so he tried to change the subject. So tonight's target is Mayor Brixton, right? Yep, Mayor Brixton. He's supposed to arrive by helicopter 2 buildings over. We take him out and we leave. What happens if something goes wrong? Then we deal with it. They sat and they waited. Eventually the helicopter arrived. All the time, the woman's face had grown darker and darker. As the helicopter landed, she stood up, rolled her neck. Yeah, we're not messing around. I'm done with this. She lifted her hand and flicked her fingers. There were 6 people getting out of the helicopter. All 6 of them dropped to their knees, clutching at their chests. Her companion looked at her a little bit concerned. What did you do? She shrugged her shoulders. I just cut their hearts in half. What? I cut their hearts in half. It's a difficult trick to pull off, but I'm kind of fed up of being up on this roof. Come on, let's go home.